So what I want to cover today is an example of where you go to a website. So we're going to have these 5 folders, these 5 files in a folder. And the idea is we want to have one page, and if you could do this with one page, you could then do this with many pages. We want to have one page that the only way you're allowed to see that page would be if some event has happened in the past, like you've logged in, and then only if you've logged in can you see this page. So we're going to have a page called the index. That's the first one we'll come to. That has a form on it, and the form will ask you for your email and password. And then the data from that was taken in by the form will be sent to a PHP page called check login. And check login, maybe what I'll do is I'll bring up the code. So the first page is going to be, this is an HTML page. So it's our login page. I've made the color aqua. And I have a form down here. So it's asking for an email and a password. And then if you hit the button that comes with it, the action of the form is to send the data to checklogin.php for processing. And then if checklogin has some problem with it, it's going to come back to this page. Let me actually bring up checklogin. So the form will look like this. Here's what the form's going to look like. It's going to say, here's the login page. You type in your email, your password, and you hit this button. What you give us, the email and the password, gets sent to the PHP page, checklogin.php. So we've seen this before. This is the thing that's going to be now new for today. So here's our email and our password coming into local variables in our PHP block. What we're going to do is, so in this case, I'm not actually going out to an SQL database to verify. So the only email that we accept here is this one. So I've just kind of hard-coded some variables. So it's Costanza@Seinfeld.com, and the password is Bosco, and the first name is George. So have you guys seen that episode of Seinfeld where his password is Bosco? Have you guys ever seen Seinfeld? Okay. I'm getting old if you haven't heard of Seinfeld. So, okay. But anyway, one of the episodes, George Costanza, there was a big issue about his password was Bosco, and he didn't want his fiancée and didn't want anyone finding out about it. So anyway, I needed an email and a password, so I'm using that one. So basically, if you type in Costanza@Seinfeld.com and Bosco, that's considered a legitimate login. Everything else is considered a problem. So I've decided, like, the name I'm getting, it's as though we went out to a database and grabbed information from the database and set it into the variable. So I'm calling it database name is George, the database says the email is this, and the password is this. So it's like that came back from the database, and we want to do a comparison to what the person just typed in. So if the entered email, which is the one we got from the form, the login form, if that equals, we have to do 2 equals to say that they're equal. You're not assigning. We're not taking one value and copying it over to another field. We're just asking, are these a match? So if the entered email and the database email match each other, and you have to do the ampersand thing twice in PHP, and the entered password and the database password both match each other, this person is considered to have legitimately logged in. So what we're going to do is we're going to use what's called a session variable. So what that means is if you're connected to a server, so let's say you log into Facebook, you're connected to a server, you're logged into Facebook. Now maybe, let's say, so I like using Facebook as an example because you guys all use them. Let's say on Facebook your folder is called, www.facebook.com/ whatever your name is. Maybe you're the first person with that name who created a login. If somebody who's not you and not logged in went to www.facebook.com/ whatever your name is, maybe first name dot, middle initial dot, last name, whatever your folder's name is, if somebody went straight there, they shouldn't be able to see your stuff because they never logged in. even if you're logged in somewhere else in the world, they shouldn't be able to see it. It's because you're logged in somewhere else in the world, they're not logged in. Right? Does that make sense? So we need to somehow have some variable that says between the Facebook server and the current computer you're sitting at, there's a certain set of fields that we can set that only relate to that connection. So someone else on a different connection can't log in. So we don't want to just say you're logged in somewhere in the world and therefore anybody can get to your files. Only the PC that you're currently logged in, it should be able to see it. So a session variable is a piece of data that only the server and your particular PC that you're logged in at the moment can have access to. And it's saved on the server. So what we can do is we can create what's called cookies. And the idea of what a cookie is, it's a pretty simple concept. All you're doing is saying that a certain field takes on a certain value. And I think they came up with the name cookie because it's kind of like you're baking into the field the value. I think that's where it originally came from. So for example, we could say, singer equals Bruce Springsteen. So you're taking Bruce Springsteen and you're saying that's now what the singer equals, or first name equals George, last equals Costanza, whatever you want. So basically a cookie, and every session could have as many cookies as you want. So I'm creating a cookie called logged in, and logged in I can set it to have any value I want. I can set it to true or false or yes or no. I can set it to anything I want. So what we're basically saying is if the emails match what the database says it is and the password matches what the database says it is, I'm going to set a session cookie, and I've named it logged in, and I'm now going to give it a value. And the value is yes. And I've decided to set whatever the first name of the person that came back from the database, I'm going to set that to a session cookie called name. And the idea is that if we go to another page, while your current browser is connected to the server, if we go to another page, we can retrieve these values, but only from that browser's connection to the server. It won't happen if someone else connects to the same server. Those cookies will not be set. So all I'm doing here is I'm saying a cookie named logged in is set to yes, and a cookie called name is set to George. So I'm setting those fields, and now if we jump to another page, the other page can now ask what are these currently equal, and they'll be set. And now I'm doing that trick where we just send this page now sends us to another page. It's called the welcome page. So now we're going to, if the person logged in correctly, these two cookies will be set, and then we'll jump to the welcome page. And just to cover in case they did something wrong, I think it covered the kind of meaningful issues. So I started off saying we don't have any problem, so the problem variable is set to quote, quote, meaning nothing, set to an empty string. And then I say if the email matches what the database says and the password, and this ampersand equals means does not equal. So if the email matches but the password is different, I'm going to say the problem is an invalid password, so I'll set the problem field to be an invalid password. And if the email doesn't match the one in the database, so that would be like a user who's not even in our system. We'll just say we don't know who you are. So that's an invalid user. If we have you as a user but the password is wrong, then the problem will be an invalid password. So once we figured out what the problem is, we'll then send you back to the login screen and tell you what the problem is. Invalid password, invalid user. So if all goes well and the person logs in correctly, we set these two cookies. I'm going to be using one to verify that the person is logged in, and the other one, in case they are logged in, I want to say welcome George or whatever. So I might want to know what their name is. And then we're going to go to the welcome page. So the idea is basically, I'll go through the code of the welcome page. Okay, So instead of just saying welcome, what we're going to do is, let's say the welcome page is something special. It has some, top secret information. Only people who are logged in should be able to see this. We unfortunately have to put the welcome page out on a public server so that the whole world can get at it, because eventually the people who are logged in need to get at it. But some people, we don't want them to see it because they haven't met a condition, and in this case it's being logged in. So basically up until now, the header section of our web pages, what have we used headers for up until now? We put a title in. Anything else we do in the header? Oh, we put the style sheets, right, in the header. So in the header, we kind of put information about the page, but it's actually in the body where the stuff that you actually see exists. But we could have definitions in the header, and maybe even like the title, this is the welcome page. But what we're now going to do in the header is before we let somebody see this page, we want to check, are they currently logged in? Well, the way we're going to check that is we're going to say we're on the same session as the last page. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask, is the session variable logged in? And this is again the not sign. If this is not set, then what we'll do is we're going to send them back to the first page, the login page, and I'm going to say the problem is you are currently not logged in. So actually the way this was coded is not coded so great. As long as logged in was set to something, I could have set it to no, I could have set it to hello, I could have set it to anything. As long as I set it to something, we're going to let the person log in. So if this field, this session variable logged in, has not been set, what that basically means is somebody came straight to the welcome page without logging in, and we don't want them to see it, so we're going to say to them, hey, you're not logged in, and we'll send them over to the login page and say, hey, you're not, with some message that says, hey, you're not logged in. So was that message there? We handle that case in the index page. Oh, so yeah, here's where we're handling all the problems. So if you for some reason come back to this page with a problem, we're going to have in our PHP code, we're going to read the problem, and then we'll say the error message is, change the font to red, say error, semicolon. If the problem is invalid user, we'll say you have an invalid user. Invalid password, we'll say invalid password. And the other message is you're currently not logged in, so you are not logged in yet. And we'll print that in red on the login page. If there's no error, there won't be any page. So there won't be any comment. So right now, here's the login page. So I'm currently not logged in. So if I decided to go to the page that you need to be logged in, if I typed in right here, if I typed in, let me just change this for a second. If I typed in welcome.php, so if I type in welcome.php right up here, and I try to go straight to that page, and that's kind of what the whole point of this talk is. The welcome page, the code goes like this. The code says, I'm going to read the session variable, which would be currently not set, and if it's not set, I'm going to send them to the index page telling them what their problem is. And then exit means we're not going to do any more. The reason why we're putting this PHP code that's first checking to see if we're allowed to see this page, the reason we're putting it in the header is the browser will receive the head section first, and if all goes well, the body will come second. So like if you've ever gone to a web page, you see like the title on the top while it's still thinking and the body's coming in. If the body is very complicated, it might take some time to come. but the header comes first, and if nothing goes wrong, the body comes after it. Well, here we have a case where something's going to go wrong. So if I type in, if this code all works correctly, if I just go directly to the welcome page, not PHP. So if I go straight to the welcome page, so what I'm trying to do is, like, let's say I looked over somebody's shoulder and saw the address of the page, and I want to get there, but I don't have a password or an account. If I go straight to it, I went to the welcome page. The welcome page in the header said, hey, the cookie saying you're logged in has not been set yet, so it bounced me back to the login page and says you are currently not logged in. So I'm trying to see the welcome page, but the welcome page had a problem in the header, in the head, and sent me to this page. So now if I try to log in, if I type in a bad email and a bad password, I should get, that's an invalid user. That's not one of the users in our database. And if I type in the correct email, but a bad password, I get a bad password error. And obviously, if we were doing a professional job here, we would use one of those spry password things, so people can't see the password. But just for the demonstration purposes, I wanted to show the password. Now, if I go, if I type in the password correctly, from the login page, these answers are being sent to the PHP page that checks that they're correct, and if they're correct, it will set the session cookie to say logged in equals yes, and the first name equals George. And then send me to the welcome page, and the welcome page now knows that the session has been set. So now I'm considered logged in. So, yeah, so once again, what happened with this code is that when we went to the welcome page, it was the page before this. So it would be the check login. This page liked the password, the email and the password that I sent. So it said logged in equals yes. First name equals George, and actually we can make as many of we can set as many fields as we want. We could have said last name equals Costanza. We could have said time of day equals anything. We could set a whole bunch of stuff. We could have a field called time logged in. So if we decided we want to keep track of how long people are logged in, they log in for half an hour. We say, oh, last time you were here, you logged in for half an hour. So there's lots of things we could track. So we set these fields and then sent them to the welcome page. The welcome page, there's two ways to get there now. One is through this login page, and one is you go straight there without being logged in. And that's what this code is trying to do. This code is saying, the welcome page is saying, as soon as this comes, as soon as you come to this page, the head checks to see, did some other page set the login field, the logged in field? Has that been set to something? And if it has not been set, if it's not set, then we send them to the login page and say, hey, you haven't logged in yet. If it is set, then we skip this part. This is if this login session was not done, then we do everything from here to here. If it was set, then we skip this part and we just say the name equals whatever the current value of the name field is, which we set to George on the last page. So now we have a variable called name that is equal to the person's name. And now you see the body, and the body will come through. So we'll say welcome, and then in PHP we'll print out the person's name. And so now what I did was I added a form that allows them to hit a button that says log out. So what if we didn't log out? Well, right now, as we are logged in, what does this basically mean? As we bounce around from page to page during this session. So the session is this browser connected to that server. As long as the browser is connected to the same server, all the session cookies are set the way they've been set. So if I now jump to another page, logged in equals yes and name equals George for that page too. So that information travels around now from page to page during this login session. We might want to be able to clear those cookies for some reason. In fact, if you logged into this website and then walked away, these cookies are set, and anyone sitting down would be logged in as you. We might even want to have a timer, like after 10 minutes they go away. So the idea is just that we're setting these values, and these values will hop around from page to page. The values, session cookies are recorded on the server. There's also browser cookies, which is the same exact concept, but they're recorded on your browser. So JavaScript would be a better language to use to manipulate browser cookies, and PHP is a good language to use to manipulate session cookies, because session cookies are on the server. So an example of a browser cookie, and we had another class on browser cookies, but an example of a browser cookie might be if you wanted to remember a password for a certain website. So if you went to like your, even Facebook has that, it'll say like, you want to remember this password. If you answer yes, it'll be recorded in the memory of your browser. So if you came back tomorrow to log in, it would remember it from yesterday. So you ever get those questions like, do you want your password to be saved, or is this a public computer, or is it your private one? And you could say yes or no. What you're really doing is if you say yes, in your browser, a field maybe called password is being set to whatever your password is, so when you come back tomorrow, it'll already be set. It'll just read it from the browser's memory and fill it in for you. So the big distinction between the type of cookie we're using is that session cookies are server cookies and browser cookies are on the client side. So if we went to, so let's see, we're now logged in. If I went back, if I hit the back arrow, I'm still considered logged in. I just happen to went backwards to the login page. So if I now just go forward, I should be able to be on the welcome page, because I'm still considered logged in, even though I'm now back at the login page. We could have, if we wanted to, said if you ever come to the login page, one of the first things we do is clear all the cookies, because maybe that means you're not logged in anymore if you ever showed up at this page. But right now, the way it's been coded up is I'm logged in. So if I go forward, I'm still logged in. So then I created another page. Created a page called, that's what I called it. This was, yeah, down here I created a form. The form down here, where's the action? It goes to a script called log off. So you know when you go in, you log into a bank or Facebook, while you're logged in, you could just close the browser and you're logged out. But there's also sometimes a button that says log off or log out. And you can hit that button. And one of the steps that does is it clears all your cookies, so that that web browser is no longer logged in as you. So that's what I'm simulating here. I have a button, and I'm sending it to a PHP script called logoff.php. So all this script is doing, if you hit the log off button, I'm going to this page and I'm basically saying, I'm reading the name, which is currently set to George. I'm reading the name, and then I'm doing a PHP command called session destroy, which will clear all the cookies. Now every cookie is not set. And then I go to the goodbye.php page with the name, so it'll say goodbye George. But by the time, so I read the name first before I destroyed everything, and then once I destroyed it, the cookie name is no longer set, but I saved it into a local variable in PHP so I could print it out one last time. And then I send it to the goodbye page, and the goodbye page I don't think does a whole lot. Here's the goodbye page. So the goodbye page, the name is passed in, so I can do a get. That's just that passing from page to page from PHP. So The name George I save into a local variable, and then in red I say goodbye George. And this will be a red page. So if I hit the log off button, if I hit this log off button, that's going to call the log off script, which will clear all the cookies and then send me to a goodbye page to say, like, one last time, goodbye George. So if I hit this, I'm going to go forward in the browser to the goodbye page. So now I'm on the page that says goodbye George, but my cookies have all been cleared. So what should happen if I go back? If I hit this back arrow up here. So what was the page I was on just before this one? This is the goodbye page. And right before this, I was on the welcome page. So I was on the welcome page, I hit log off, which cleared all the cookies and sent me to this page. So if I go back, where should I go? What?
Login page.
Yeah, but well, first, where would I try to be going? I'd be trying to go to the welcome page, but I'm currently not logged in anymore. So that's going to kick me back to the login page and say you're not logged in, hopefully. So if I go back one, and now I tried to go back to the welcome page, and the welcome page said, no, the cookie's not set. Kick me back to the login page. So now it's telling me I got to log in. You're not logged in yet. Now what if, I'm not even sure what the answer is. What if I go forward? Would it go to welcome and kick me back here, or would I go to goodbye? What do you think? I'm not even sure. Right, if I go forward, the page I was just on, so basically I went from the goodbye page, I tried to go back to the welcome page, and the welcome page said, no, you're not logged in, sent me here. Now, what page did I just come from if I go forward? What do you think it would be? The answer, does anyone have a guess? The answer would be, did the welcome page ever even make it in? In other words, the head tried to run, and the head said, no, I'm not sending the body. So when you start stacking up, what page did you come from? Does it count if the body never came? I'm thinking it doesn't. So I think if I go forward, it'll send me back to the goodbye page. So what the two choices are, it'll send me back here, right? I'm going to go forward to the welcome page, which is going to kick me back to here because I'm not logged in. Or was that not even considered loaded, and it'll just go the page I came from, like the goodbye page? So, anyone want to guess? Here. It'll send you back here. So you're saying it thinks the page I just came from was the welcome page, which is just going to send me back here. It thinks the most recent page I was on was the welcome page, even though we never saw it because it was here. But let's see. I wonder if, well, okay. So in this case, the welcome page got totally skipped over. The header. So obviously we tried to look at it, but the head told us go to the login page. But this browser considers like we never even saw the page. And maybe even another browser might try to put us on the welcome page, which would send us back to this page. So yeah, so that's really that's really kind of the whole point of this topic is every page, whether you have the authority to see it or not, has to be made available to the public. But what we'll do in the head section is through PHP, so that's actually done on the server. In the head section, we will detect if the person doesn't belong on this page. And if they don't belong, we won't send the body. So the head and the body will be on a public server, but the head will check if you're even allowed to see it. And if you're not allowed to see it, we won't send the body, we'll just send them somewhere else. And that's the technique we'll use. So if, so like for example, if you were, you were creating a website like Facebook. So one thing you got to do is you have to log in. Now when you log in, your friends have folders on Facebook too. www.facebook.com/ probably whatever their name is. Or if there's a group of people with the same name, it might be that name 2 and 3 and 4. But eventually they all have a folder. And if you went to see somebody's folder, and Facebook is set up in such a way that you have to be a friend of that person before you can see their page, how would you implement that? So you probably need one cookie just to see if you're logged in or not. And then, so you almost can't see anything except the login page until you log in. But then out of all the pages that are out there on Facebook, you're allowed to see only the ones that you're friends of. So we'd end up, any idea of just, how you can decide which of all the pages that are out there, what code would go into each page before it displayed it? How would it check that you're allowed to see it? And then if you're allowed to see it, it would let you see it. Otherwise it will tell you, no, you must log in first before you see this page. So one thing we could do, I'm not saying this is the way Facebook did it, but one thing we could do is, where was the welcome page? So, I mean, like where we're saying if logged in is true, what we might be able to do is have an array. So one thing we could do is, just like we can have a variable by name and have that variable set to something, we could also make an array, a collection of common variables. So we could have an array called friends. And what I mean by an array is we could say like friend 1 and friend 2 and friend 3 and friend 4. So when you log in, we go out to the database and get a list of all your friends. So we say friend 1 is this person, friend 2 is this person, friend 3 is this person, and it could be, you could have 900 friends. And then when you go to someone's page, anyone's page, the code up here might say go through all of your friends and find a match. And if the match is true, then we will, or if we don't find a friend, if this person is none of your friends, then we're going to send you to a page that says you must not log in again. What's the page you go to? You must ask to be this person's friend.
It's like their page, but it's private.
Right. So what I'm saying is, like, every page on Facebook would probably has something like that. There's probably a few ways to do this, but they probably have a chunk of code in the header that's in a PHP block that says, so there's when you log in on your login page, when you type in your password correctly and hit enter, the code that is like this part, the code that detects that you have logged in correctly, this code will say something like logged in is true, so that you can bounce around from your pages. But then there'll be some code here that says go out to the MySQL database, and for you as login, give me a report of all your friends, and maybe 80 friends come back. Then in here it'll say session, friend, and then open paren 1 equals the first friend, open paren 2 equals the second friend. And we could put that in a for loop, so we could just say, we're building up a bunch of cookies with all your friends. So once you're logged in, we now have a collection of all your friends. So now when you go to visit anybody's page, whether you're a friend of that person or not, when you go to visit someone's page, in the head section, the code here is going to go through all of the people you're friends with and see if it matches this person. And if it doesn't match, we're going to send you to a page that says you must ask to be this person's friend before you can see their page, something like that. So the point I'm trying to make is that these cookies are not tied to being logged in or not. They're tied to whatever you decide it means. So I just happen to choose it means that you're logged in or not. But it could really be whatever you want it to mean. So for example, I think we were talking about as a class, like if we created a website for like managing a condominium association. So let's say we had 2 types of logins. the people who are on the board that runs the condominium, they might log in and they have like the ability to chat with each other and talk about, you know, private conversations that other people shouldn't see. And then maybe there's a different type of login. People who live in the condominium who just want to log in and, you know, maybe post on a swap board some stuff they're trying to sell, or they want to just blog on the condominium's blog site. So we might have like two different types of login, or maybe like a high-level login and a low-level login, or different logins have different permissions. And the way we would do that is by setting different cookies. If a board member logs in, you know, we go out, if the person logs in, and in the database we have a field called, are you a board member, yes or no? And if yes, they get more authority, which basically means we'll just set more cookies to figure out what their authority is. And then on the pages on a website, we just check the cookies, the session cookies, to see if they are allowed to see this page or not. So I wanted the example to be simple so we can see the code and see what it's doing. But I didn't want it to be so simple that you lose the idea that this is not just being tied to logging in, whether you're logged in or not. It's tied to whatever you want it to mean. So we could set we could set the cookies to mean whatever we want. And then there's other things we could do, like for example, we could set a timer that tells us these cookies only remain in effect for the next 10 minutes. And you've seen that before. You log into some account and then you're sitting there for 10 minutes and then goes, you have one more minute or you will be logged out. And that's because the session cookies were set on a timer, which is probably a safety thing. So you don't just log in and then walk away and forget something. Within a few minutes it will be logged out. The other thing I just wanted to mention that we do there's this routine called session start. If you don't do that, then these variables are, session start is basically saying, and I put that, it has to be put in on every page that wants to read about the session. So this is the welcome page, and then the check login page had to do it also. So every page that's going to be sharing the data. So this is basically, like I said before, it's data on the server. So it's a bunch of variables. This variable is set to this value. This variable is set to this value. And if any page wants to read and write from that, you have to first say session start. And now you've joined to those variables. And then since we're on the topic of database encryption, I'm sorry, words going into a database, anybody who has access to the database, let's say we're actually reading and writing from an MySQL database, which we talked about at a different class. If we ask the person to enter their password when they create an account and we stored it into a database, anybody who has access to the database can read those passwords. So PHP offers different ways that you can encrypt the password. So let's say, for example, just to get an idea of a simple encryption algorithm, let's say we wanted to encrypt the password in such a way that every letter of the password was stored being one letter after it in the alphabet. So let's say that's our encryption algorithm. So Bosco would end up being C, P, T, D, P. Right? Does that make sense just as a simple encryption? Right? So let's say we read the password from the form, run an encryption routine over it. So we might just say database password equals encrypt in open parentheses database password. So that basically would make those steps happen. And then we would store it into the database as C, P, T, D, P. And any human being reading that would make no sense of it. And they couldn't use that and try to log in as that person. What they would have to know is how to decrypt it. Right? And then the decryption algorithm would be to take that thing that's in the database and turn it back into this so that this code can then do the compare to it. So, you would want, if you're creating a website for someone hired you to create a website for them, you'd like to tell them, I'll encrypt all your passwords. And PHP has algorithms that do that. So you could just look up on Google, you know, encrypting passwords in PHP, and it'll give you examples on how to do that. So if you had a method, let's say the method was called encrypt, or let's say encrypt method 3, then you would have to use the corresponding decrypt method 3. So you just find it on Google and use those if you wanted to. So any questions about this? And like I say, I wanted to keep it simple. I didn't want this to be code that actually goes out to a MySQL database and pulls stuff back, because then we couldn't see what was coming back, and I'd rather have it just spelled out so it'd be easy to follow. So I hope this was easy to follow. But basically the overall idea is that some of the web pages, you're creating a website, and pretty much every website we've created so far, if someone knew the name of the file, of every one of your files, they can just see them. They can type it into the URL and just see it. And what we want to do is have some of the pages be viewable to some people based on something that's happened. Either they've logged in, or they could even have a game, like if they get some questions right, they could advance to the next, the hardest. Let's say you had easy questions and medium questions and hard questions, and they have to answer 8 out of 10 of the easy questions before they can advance to the next page. So if they answer 8 out of 10, you set some cookie, then go to the next page that says they're at this level now. So we could have, you know, a level. We could have a variable called level, and it's initially set to 1. If they answer some questions right, it becomes a 2, and that allows them to the next page. And then if they do good there, it becomes a 3, and that allows them to the next page. So we could use these cookies just to decide whether they can and cannot see pages.